me. I'm the guy you typically find eating all his meals alone, behind the TV just watching reruns of some of my favorite shows for the umpteenth time. I know it sounds sad, but it it really isn't. I can see why someone would think that it's sad, but I choose to maintain a different perspective on the matter because, well, because I'm an introvert. This is who we are. This is what we do. We stayed away from the masses and the overcrowded social gatherings long before a pandemic even struck. And we survived. We, in fact, thrived in the loneliness. Well, not loneliness, we thrived in solitude. You know, yeah, and if you think about it, really think about it, all anyone ever needs is just close family and friends, a personal project to keep you occupied, maybe a Netflix subscription, and someone to love. That's all anyone really needs in this life. For the longest time, that is what I believe. And if I'm being honest, I still do believe that. It's just the events or the lack thereof of events from the last couple of days have got me asking some questions. Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like the provider states that you need to quarantine until tomorrow. So tomorrow is your last day of quarantine.
Okay.
Are you having a fever or any symptoms yet?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so if you're still not having a fever and you're still not having symptoms after your last day of quarantine tomorrow, you can go back to work and resume normal activities on the 17th. You don't need to come back in for a negative COVID test.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so as long as you don't have a fever and as long as you don't have symptoms, you can go back to normal everyday living on the 17th.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Anything else I can help you with?
No, that's all.
All right, take care.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Yep, I tested positive for COVID. That wasn't fun news to receive, but fortunately, I was asymptomatic, which meant that I did not have to go through the same kind of painful recovery that millions of people around the world had to experience. And more importantly, I'm alive today to tell my story. It's funny to think I came out of this with a story because unlike most people who had COVID at one point or another, my biggest personal struggle throughout this experience was not one about surviving a disease. It was more about me surviving myself and really my mind. I knew I was asymptomatic, but it began to feel like I had lost my sense of taste and smell. I could no longer smell the peace that usually emanated from my room, and this pleasurable taste of silence I had grown accustomed to began to elude me. My home, this haven, my fortress, felt like a prison. And now this tasteless singleness of cream grew so prominent to me. The blatant lack of color was all I could see, and it got even worse when the walls literally started closing in on me. I swear. You do not see it, but I swear, one time these walls had smiles carved across their faces and they taunted me as I drowned in my own thoughts. They made fun of me as I choked on the emptiness of my own abode. It did not matter how many soothing baths I took, I developed an itch that made me uncomfortable in my own skin. I remember asking what was Friends and Criminal Minds. These shows were like an escape to me, but suddenly even my TV was no longer the portal it used to be. I felt trapped. I was not crazy. This was not an anxiety attack. This is not who I am. This is not what happens when I'm alone because I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert. I kept whispering these words to myself like some sort of a mantra, hoping it will fix everything, but for some reason it was no longer as potent as it used to be. Felt like I was in a completely different, completely new world. Yeah. The COVID dimension. That really just started as a joke that a work colleague shared with the team. It was the thought that some parts of your body could be infected with COVID even before the virus got into your system and made you sick. So I remember we used to joke about the fact that, for instance, if you touched an unsanitized item, your index finger could just be in the COVID dimension waiting to infect you or somebody else. And it was really a silly joke, but I guess having all this time to myself brought out the creativity in me or the conspiracy theorist in me, whichever you want to go with. And I started thinking up an explanation for what the COVID dimension was and what really goes on in there. As crazy as it sounded, it gave a bit of substance to the theory that I was, in fact, an introvert who just happened to find himself in an alternate universe. Because it was an easier narrative to accept than having to face the fact that I might have been wrong about my personality this whole time, that maybe I just didn't know who I was. Because I wanted to believe that after this period of quarantine was over, I would go back to enjoying spending time alone and just doing the same things I've loved to do over and over again. So I made the COVID dimension a thing. And throughout this whole process, I still maintained ties to reality because, there were days you just wake up to a very beautiful sight and I'll spend several minutes just watching from my window. And I had friends come over to drop off groceries. They never stayed long enough to get exposed, but that was some form of contact. My family would call every single day, and those were real. I knew those were real. It was part of the real world. It was different from anything I was making the COVID dimension out to be. But what was unusual about this experience was the fact that I found myself wanting the phone calls, wanting the drop-offs. I found myself craving that extra bit of social connection, even if it meant I had to stay on the phone just talking to health workers who, by the way, were super amazing. But yeah, that was a part of the experience I struggled to reconcile with my personality or who I thought I was. Because at that point in time, you have to start asking yourself, am I really someone who thrives in solitude, or maybe I'm just more of a people person than I thought. So all that was a bit jumbled up in my head, and theorizing the COVID dimension made sense of it all and helped me find an escape, I guess. Now that my period in quarantine is over, do I still believe the COVID dimension is real? I don't. Obviously, there's no scientific proof to it, but I want to believe it is, because if it's not, I have to face the question of whether or not I'm really as largely introverted as I've always thought. And firstly, I don't think I want to answer that, but more importantly, I don't think I even have the answer to that question. But maybe now, having heard my story, you could tell me your opinion about that.